Kennedy Graham, a Green Party Member of Parliament, based here in Christchurch.
So, what are some of the challenges you face in the environment of Parliament, standing for sustainability?
Well, first off, I suppose it's getting the whole concept of sustainability accepted and trying to get some sceptics in the government and maybe elsewhere to accept that there is a sustainability problem, that we are ecologically overshooting. And half the problem of that is that we're overshooting the planet, humanity. But in New Zealand, we're one of the very few countries that has an ecological surplus. So we could be forgiven for thinking that everything is fine. We've got dirty streams, dirty lakes and so on, but the lack of sustainability is much more underlying, much deeper than that. And the fact that we're relatively well off doesn't mean that economically, 50 years down the line, we're not going to have problems, because we're part of the global economy, and that we're trashing the planet. That's the problem. And that has to be understood by every Member of Parliament, and especially every Cabinet Minister.
And do you find that very challenging to get that acceptance even of the problem?
It is challenging because if you're in opposition, you are inherently reactive. You're not proactively pursuing a legislative program. It's the government's legislative program. So you're almost by definition reacting to the government's legislation week after week after week. But there are various areas. You can have a general debate, which is you're allowed 5 minutes every second week pretty much, or to say anything you wish on any subject in Parliament. But that's a little bit chaotic, let's face it. The other thing you can do is you can do your own draft legislation and put that into a ballot. Well, that's not automatically going onto the House's order program, and it's pure chance whether your bill comes out of the ballot, which is a rather quixotic way of running democracy. But if that's all there is, well, I'll take it. And as it happens, I've had 2 bills come out in my 2 years in Parliament, which is most unusual, and my 3rd bill, which is on sustainability, Public Finance Amendment Bill, which would introduce sustainable indicators into the budget and require the Minister of Finance to address these things. That's in the bill. That's in the ballot now. So I'm just hopeful that my 3rd bill will come out, and the government will have to concentrate on it.
Could you say a little bit about that 3rd bill that you talked about it in the conference today? About merging sustainability with financial.
Yeah, well, you see, under the Public Finance Act right now, the Minister of Finance is legally obliged to address the traditional macroeconomic concepts: GDP, unemployment, consumer price index, current account balance, and so on. He has to address those, legally obliged. My bill would add a raft of about 39 environmental indicators on population, biodiversity, land use, water quality, atmosphere, energy, waste, and so on. That would be determining whether we're moving towards sustainable development or away from it. And so in presenting the budget, the Minister of Finance would be obliged to have regard to the environment as well as the traditional notion of how to run an economy. That's new. That would be radically new, but it's essential. You can't just allow it to be separated out and have a separate environmental reporting act when 3 or 4 or 6 months later you're debating the environment, having already made the decisions about the economy. They have to be together.
So what would happen if they do just remain separate?
Well, most people would agree that the traditional economic model, what's the so-called neoclassical economic model, which does not have adequate regard for the utilisation of the natural resource base and does not have proper regard for the costs of your waste disposal, what's called externalities, the productive process focuses only on manufacturing a raw material into a commodity and selling it on the market. And that's not good enough. So you have to bring all of those together and have a requirement that neoclassical model mutate into what is called ecological economics, where the economy is seen as a part of the environment, not separate from it. The government talks about balancing the economy with the environment. You can't do that. We've got a philosophical, methodological dilemma if that's the government's approach. The economy is subservient and subordinate to the environment. So that would be a different approach.
What would you say are the greatest challenges in getting people to understand that?
Maybe it's a matter of communication and also education here at the university. There is ecological economics taught and certainly researched. But you take Massey University, as I understand it, at Massey University, the Ecological Economics Centre has been purely research and is only right now transforming into doing some teaching. Now, this is 100 years, 50 to 100 years after the traditional neoclassical model of economics has been so dominant throughout the universities. It's hugely overdue. So it's education at the tertiary qualified level. It's also education in terms of communication to the public. You don't have to express it in terms of economic models and so on. You can just say, we shouldn't be trashing the planet for the sake of building things. Simple as that. People will resonate to that.
Do you face the problem of stereotypes within Parliament?
Stereotypes in the sense of maybe stereotypical thinking. And of course the Green Party positions itself on the edge of change because we think change and reform has to happen very fast and very far-reaching, like within the next 10 years or so. Otherwise we've got major global problems. Of course, almost by definition you're going to run into resistance coming from establishment thinking. And there's, you don't want to really man the barricades in the street. You've got to try to gently and persuasively and with respect show where our thinking is leading us into wrong directions and moving around to a change. I think the clean green branding is symptomatic of its times. It's somewhat adolescent. It's commercial. It's misleading. So you won't be surprised. I think actually we should trash it. I don't think we should have the branding of that kind. I think it is undignifying, and will be found out, as we already are. About the Guardian articles and so on. But the response of the government is that we've just got to try and clean up our act so that our brand remains intact. I suggest there are bigger, broader, better values out there than branding ourselves, which is in a sense a commercial upmarket word for prostituting ourselves in a way for money. I think there are values out there that as a government and as a society we should be promoting. Not necessarily selling to the rest of the humanity, but just getting our own house in order, reflecting our own values. I don't think brand New Zealand and New Zealand Inc. are the right values for us to go.
Just one more question.
Yeah.
What would be your dream bill if you could put anything through?
Honestly, the two, I've had three, and two of them are my twin dreams. When I made my maiden speech in December 2008, I said New Zealand really has to be a sustainable society and it has to be a responsible global citizen. And so my public finance amendment bill is to that end, to be a sustainable society, so that we don't trash our own country in the name of economic growth and destroy the environment. That's point one. The other bill, in terms of being a responsible global citizen, is that we've got to be very careful how we respect the United Nations Charter with the use of our forces, our armed forces overseas. So I had a bill last year that actually came out of the ballot and was debated in the House called the International Non-Aggression and Lawful Use of Force Bill. And it would make the use of force aggression in violation of the United Nations Charter, a criminal offence. Not just a state responsibility, which you might violate and shrug your shoulders, but an individual criminal offence on our leaders. So the Prime Minister and Minister of Defence, other cabinet ministers, if they commit our troops overseas, either on their own or with a larger power, and you could argue Iraq, 2003, we didn't go, but Australia did, then that would count as aggression, and it would be an individual offence with 10 years imprisonment for the Prime Minister. And that came surprisingly close. Again, it's far-reaching, although it simply is reflecting rather rapid progress that's happening internationally anyway through the International Criminal Court. I would just bring that home into New Zealand domestic scene a little bit earlier. So it's happening internationally. And it got surprising support. Labour supported it, Maori Party supported it, the government opposed. It was voted down 64 to 58, which isn't too bad for something of that scale. So those are the two areas. Those are my two. If you twin those into one, then you have a decent society.